Good afternoon. Welcome to our session, Designing Systems for Change, Implementing the Science of Reading. I'm thrilled to be joined by my co-host and our thought partners over at the Association of Latino Administrators and Superintendents. I'm Dr. Layla Newland, the Senior Vice President and General Manager here at Education Elements, and we're so grateful for our audience taking time out of their days and the thought leaders that we have joining us today, donating their time to share lessons learned. So let's dive in. If as folks enter, they can please take a moment to introduce themselves in the chat. Just to set the stage, we here at Education Elements are thinking a lot about change and management. Our mission here at Education Elements is to strengthen school systems to be the top-rated choice in their local community for high-quality educational experiences by driving effective change that improves conditions for students, staff, and families to thrive.
Do you want me to jump in, Layla? I'll go ahead and jump right in.
Easily.
Absolutely. Layla, I'm actually just thrilled about the partnership that ALAS and Elements has had over the years, and just even more excited about where we're going. As you can see, we have 20 state affiliates and over 31 million students served. And as I mentioned, actually back in August when I first took on the role, it's like we really wanted to re-envision and reimagine the way that our partnerships work, so that we're not just working with basically folks that are looking to financially sponsor the organization, but really kind of looking to provide us with the tools, resources, and platforms. And Elements has really come to the table with that. So I'm excited about the conversation that we have. I'm excited about everything that we've got going on. Our nearly 5,000 members. Hopefully most of you guys are online, so please say hello in the chat if you can. But we really want to work through our affiliates and through all the work that we're doing across the 25 states that we have, including the territory of Puerto Rico, so we can continue to move the needle for student achievement out there. Because realistically, our students need us, and that's why we were founded. We were founded on the need to serve Latino youth and historically marginalized students out there. So welcome to the conversation. I'll turn it back over to you so we can actually get our amazing panelists on board right now.
Thank you so much, Yuli. So what brings us together today? Yuli mentioned student achievement and making sure that we're adequately supporting every student in each system. The reason that we partnered on this particular topic is what we see right now happening across the country, which is this trend in guidance or legislation requiring school districts to use the science of reading methodology. And we understand this is a significant change in instructional practice, in curriculum decision-making, in system support for professional learning. And we also understand that this is against the backdrop of high expectations for quick results, as with any change that you all are charged to drive, lack of resources, deeply ingrained beliefs and understanding of what good reading instruction is, and complex implementation, needing to consider every factor. And I'm going to talk about implementation and the factors that affect change and effective change management in a moment, and then the limitations of the data. And so what you see here coming up on the screen is a change matrix that we here at Education Elements built in our work with thousands of school systems across not only the country, but the globe. And in my 20 years in working both within a school system as a teacher and team leader to now working alongside districts as a consultant, we've seen some principles that when they're in place and when they're considered, we see effective change happening in systems. And so what you see across the screen is vision with heart, leader as networker, agency and voice, making sure that you're effectively communicating, providing professional learning that changes hearts and minds, right? We as educators, we care deeply about what we're doing. And we believe that what we're doing in our classrooms and in our schools and in our systems is in the best interest of our students. But we also need to be willing to be uncomfortable with the data, right? The data tells us if what we're doing is yielding the results and supporting our students, and then ensuring that any change we drive has legacy, that the change extends beyond me as leader or us as a leadership team, but sustained if the entire cabinet left tomorrow, right? And so, Julie, we want to dive in and hear from our thought leaders. We are so thrilled and honored to be joined by this bright group of innovative leaders who are going to be vulnerable with us, share lessons learned, as well as share celebrations and stories of success. Because what we hope for our audience today and those that listen to the recording, that you can take away some of these lessons as you think about driving change, whether it's you are in a state where you're shifting reading practice, or if there's another mandate or shift in student need or community need in which you're trying to drive change. So with that, I am thrilled to introduce our panelists. I'm going to ask each panelist to give us a brief introduction about their school system so that our audience understands your context, because as I just noted with that change matrix, we understand it's not one size fits all. There is no silver bullet to solving all of the problems in education, right? And so what we hope is folks glean lessons learned and then can figure out what they can take back into their systems to effectively manage change. And hopefully you make a new friend or two as we progress through the conversation. And to that, what I say to our audience is please engage in the chat. We are here to answer your questions. So if as our panelists are sharing their stories, you have a follow-up question, I will be monitoring the chat and hope to get to that question live. If not, we promise we will follow up with some kind of response to what you were wondering about. So with that, I am thrilled to introduce our first panelist, Eric Casillas, ELL Assistant Superintendent, CCSD Las Vegas. Eric?
Hi, good afternoon, or buenos dias, depending on which time zone you are in. I'm thrilled to be here, and thank you so much. I represent the English Language Learner Division in the Clark County School District here in Las Vegas, Nevada. We are a school system of about 300,000 students, and about just under 50,000 of them are English learners. And specifically, around 17,000 of them are newcomers, and about 18,000 of them are long-term English learners. And I'll elaborate on that as we talk about differentiation and also talk about the science of reading. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Eric. We have Dr. Linmara Colon, who is next door to me. We're Northern Virginians together. Linmara, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and the division in which you serve?
Sure. I am thrilled to be here this afternoon. I'm Linmara Colon. I'm the Director of Student Opportunity and Multilingual Services for Prince William County Public Schools in Northern Virginia. We have close to 92,000 students, and 20,000 and more are English learners. We're the 10th most diverse district in the nation, representing 180 countries, and our students represent 140 languages. So a lot of diversity here in making magic happen for all on a daily basis.
Wonderful. Thank you, Linmara. And next up, Dr. Laila Olivares, Chief of Schools in Pflugerville ISD.
Good afternoon, buenas tardes, or buenos dias to everyone. I'm Laila Olivares. I am the Chief of Schools for Pflugerville ISD. Currently, my role also incorporates Chief Academic Officer. Our district is roughly 27,000 students. About a third of our students are emergent bilingual students. And last school year, through a grant that we were able to attain, we actually opened up an international welcome center. We serve over 100 different languages in our school district based in Central Texas. And our welcome center just this school year alone, and we haven't finished the fall semester, has served over 600 families. This is recent refugees, asylees, and parolees to our school district. So a lot of new students, new families, and new cultures, and with that, new challenges as it relates to how do we teach them a new language. And so looking forward to discussing the science of teaching reading with you all today.
And finally, Michelle Simmons from CCSD, a Chief Academic Officer, CCSD. Michelle, thank you for being here.
Hello, everyone. My name is Michelle Simmons, and I serve as the Chief Academic Officer for Charleston County School District. where we serve approximately 51,000 scholars. We've doubled our multilingual population in the last couple of years. This has been where I call home for the last 27 years, a district where I've matriculated as a scholar and have served for the last several years. I'm excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Of course. Well, Michelle, since you were just off mute, if I may, because we are going to dive in to our panel discussion, what I'd love to do is kick off and ask all of our panelists to define what differentiation means to you. So if Michelle, if you don't mind kicking us off.
I don't mind at all. So in large part, differentiation to me is primarily about ensuring that scholars are exposed first and foremost to grade level instruction. Differentiation is not an excuse or a means or a way to provide below grade level content, but it's grade level content that's designed with the idea of providing, tailoring, and varying the information to student needs. So that tailoring, if you will, is based on ongoing and frequent assessments to inform where and how you might differ either the content or the process or pathway that a scholar takes, the product, or even the environment students engage with. So at its core, for me, differentiation is about knowing your scholars really, really well.
Thank you. Lila?
Yes, just to add a little bit too, because I definitely agree with Michelle's interpretation of differentiation. I look at differentiation just because I myself am an emergent bilingual, right? I was a Spanish, language first student. And so I really do think that when we ask our teachers to differentiate, we're asking them to vary something, right? Either the content, the learning environment, we're asking them to vary the process. We never ask them to vary the standard, but differentiation is about meeting our students where they are and serving them so that they are able to then access on-level content instruction. So to me, differentiation is all about what are we going to vary today and how do we teach our teachers to really provide that access to the curriculum for students. So how do we teach you to vary your instruction? Because it's really, really hard to do. And when we know that it's going to be challenging, we want to make sure that we provide the tools so that they are successful in doing that with their students. That's what it means to me as someone who had to access differentiated instruction in order to succeed in the U.S. school system.
And Mara?
Okay, so I speak Disney and I'm going to give you an analogy, okay? Because differentiation to me equates to when you go to the park. It doesn't matter what language you speak, demographics, they let you in and there's a ride for you, right? It's not a one size fits all, but you get a magical experience depending on your height requirements and in your preference. So to add and summarize what my colleagues have said, differentiation is about belonging. It's not about just being in a classroom, but really getting access to that experience that we're aiming to provide. I said a magical experience, right? And as you progress, having access to more rigorous content, products, but to me, the most important one from the ones that I heard was the environment. Do I have access to an environment where there's by name, by need content for me to show that I've accessed an experience that's for all?
I love the analogy. We use analogies in our classrooms, so I'm glad we got one in early. Eric?
All right, good morning once again. Thank you for everyone's perspectives. And Limara, I did not expect a Disney analogy, so thank you for that. I don't know how I can top that. But for me, differentiation means relationships, and it really means understanding your students and knowing what they need. And at the end of the day, differentiation needs to lead to student agency, meaning that they have access to the rigor of the standard and they can make independent choices because they have learned to cite with textual evidence. They have learned to apply the standard for mathematical practice with integrity on their own independently. Often, I think we do a good job of over supporting our students and over scaffolding to the point where they are used to that, right? So we build a sense of helplessness amongst our students. So when we build independent thinkers and independent practitioners and scholars, that is what differentiation means to me.
Thank you. So I want to progress to our next set of questions. And I'm going to start with Lynn-Mara, but I'm going to encourage our other panelists to chime in. What are some of the challenges your district has faced with ensuring differentiated support and experiences for students?
Yes, and what comes to the top of mind is one of our biggest strengths, which is the diversity can present a lot of opportunities at times. Most of our English learners are from a Hispanic background, but we do have other languages, and we have had to be very intentional about the support that we provide to not only veteran but new teachers who might experience some difficulty differentiating for all. And I'll be specific. There's a lot of resources that aim to a specific population, but what do you do when you welcome the refugee students? What do you do when you get the one student that speaks a language that nobody else speaks within the building? So we've had to be very intentional and creative so that through the curriculum and professional development that we provide teachers, students can be seen because we have this expectation that we are providing access to all, not some. So calling it out, unlearn to relearn. The science of reading and the Virginia Literacy Act in Virginia has offered us an opportunity to have a conversation of how English language development and English language arts can coexist within the same environment, and how do you differentiate so that one sets the stage for the other one to occur successfully. I'll offer another analogy with differentiation. I use the operating room table where you have multiple people with medical degrees, just like in the classroom, you have many teachers with different areas of expertise. How do we tap into each one's knowledge, plan, and collaborate so we have high levels of differentiation at different times within a classroom? So again, that time, carving that time to have those conversations, sometimes is a challenge because every minute counts in school, but we have made a lot of progress by recognizing what these true challenges are.
Lynn-Mara, I just want to say I love the analogy of the operating table because as you were talking and I was thinking about, what is the science of reading? And some may or may not know this. I was actually trained in the science of reading. And I remember a book when I was studying that I absolutely love that I think applies to what we do, whether we're teaching reading or anything else, is the diagnostic teaching of reading. And just this idea of diagnosing, right? And so that analogy, and it made me harken back to that book that I actually still have sitting here next to me on a bookshelf, just because I love the idea that that's what we're supposed to do, whether we're teaching reading or anything else, right? That diagnosing. And I don't think we talk about that enough with our staff in that way, where it is like being a doctor, right? Understanding what is the need and what is the treatment? What is the intervention? How am I going to get you there? I'm curious, other panelists, what did you think of what Lynn-Mara shared, and how does it relate to what you have going on in your system?
I could easily relate with the comments made. So whether it's the science of reading, rolling out highly quality instructional materials, high quality instructional materials, or differentiation, people power our work. You can repeat after me. People power our work. And in that, a challenge we face centers around changing mindsets. And so anytime we're introducing something new, something novel, something for the first time, a lot of times we just have to get that buy-in. And so to her points, we have to be really mindful, really deliberate, really intentional about the work, whether it's differentiation or the science of reading. And so we found that to be a challenge, and it's ongoing. It's not something that we necessarily master, but we know to do it well, to do this work well. There's some inherent challenges that come with it. And so we've just gotten really intentional about the idea of change management. Implementing and having an implementation plan is critical, or whatever the initiative is dead on arrival if we're not able to do it at a high level out the gate.
Eric, Lila, other thoughts before we move on to the next
I'll
question?
I'll add to that. So along with those lines as well, I think the challenge that we face is, often in education, we are pretty good at being very compliant with the things that we have to do. So with 360 schools, we had a 3-year rotating rollout of the science of reading across many of our schools. So some of those schools are in year 3, some of them are in year 2, year 1. But how do we build those consistent models and then supports for that? And then really ensuring that aside from compliance, that we're building teacher agency around it. So we develop PLC protocols and structures, look for tools for principals and supports for support staff along the way as well. It really is about systemizing the work and then creating systems of support in order to do that. The execution of that is always a little bit messy, but that's the work, right? We've been doing this for long enough that we know that it is messy work, but it takes corazon and it just takes a lot of dedication to get the work done. So in doing so, systemizing it, supporting it is what we are attempting to do our best with the sheer mass number of schools that we have here in Clark County, Las Vegas.
Yes, I would definitely echo all of that. I think the biggest challenges are for us, and just to add a new element to it, is at the secondary level, right? Is when you are seeing these gaps especially in literacy. Now you have a gap in our teachers' ability to remediate at that level, and it is a big, strong challenge for us. Where do we find the time and then the skills and then the resources to make sure that our students have a fair shot? If they didn't get it in elementary school, or they've had interrupted schooling because they're an emergent bilingual or a refugee coming to us, how do we help catch them up and bridge those gaps, especially at a secondary level? That is a big challenge, along with changing mindsets and helping our teachers and, frankly, our campus leaders systematize all of these processes, including look-fors, and also what does the curriculum ask us to really do, and how do we stay in our lane, grade level by grade level, to build on the science of teaching reading. So those would be some thoughts I would add to those challenges.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I'm taking notes, and I know Yuli is as well, but I just keep thinking about that unlearning piece and what a monumental challenge that is, both for our students in our schools, but also our staff. We as adults struggle to unlearn and walk away from things that we hold to be true. So with that, I'm sure we could probably spend 3 hours on this next question, but we can't. So we're going to spend 10 minutes. What lessons have you learned? Because we also often, many of these lessons we learned the hard way, right? So Michelle, do you mind kicking us off?
Sure thing. So a couple of years ago, right at the top of the pandemic, we decided it was time for us to pursue aggressively high quality instructional materials. And with that, the lesson we learned from that was that it's important sometimes to start small. We have 50,000 scholars, 80 plus schools. And so the curriculum of choice was a rather complicated one to unpack. And so one of the big takeaways, one of the big lessons learned for us was that sometimes it's okay to start really narrow, really small, even if it's with a pilot. I spoke a few moments ago about the importance of change management. And so the implementation plan that we did not necessarily have as tight as it should have been was a big pain point for us. And so moving forward, we have subsequently learned some hard lessons from that. But I just think it's really important, that idea of change management, having a solid solution as you roll out important work in your district is key and paramount. Thank you.
Lila, Eric. Any other thoughts on lessons you've learned?
Whereas there are so many, you could write a book.
I know. Where to start?
Right, but I would definitely echo everything that my colleagues have said. I think that when you think about how we rolled out the science of teaching reading in Texas, we were going through the training at the same time that COVID was happening. So while we were, as practitioners, boots on the ground, saying we're going to have to really think about things differently, more decodables, more, direct and small group instruction, a framework for MTSS that isn't just a suggestion, but like Eric mentioned, like an actual system that we hold tight in our district. It doesn't matter what size the district is. Those are the human variances that you're going to have to bridge. And so for us, I think it really was about lessons learned. And if you roll out something too quickly, it just becomes another binder on a shelf or an electronic worksheet that we don't adhere to. So the idea for us really was around piloting. It really was around giving choice. I remember starting in this district a few years ago and saying, if we don't have a robust research-based curriculum yet for tier 3, because another thing that happened during COVID is it became a free-for-all in some places, not because folks didn't want to adhere to, but everyone was trying to figure out what it was that was working for their students, especially depending on which instructional setting they were in, whether hybrid or in person. And as people were coming back, we really did see a wide variance in the resources that were being utilized. So to me, it didn't matter which product, frankly, in the end they ended up with. It mattered that they chose something and that teachers and interventionists specifically had a voice in what they were choosing. So we took an entire year. And that was something that we learned, is that if you're going to take folks, from a free-for-all, and we use whatever we can get our hands on and whatever our budgets can afford, to saying the district has a vision to really help support, but we can't support 20 different products. We're going to have to support one. How do we bring adult learners together? And how do we understand what it is that they're going to lose in this change management? And it can feel like a big loss when you're losing some autonomy, or you're really practiced in XYZ, phonics program. And now the district is saying, but we're all going to capitalize on this. So for us, it was a process that, took a year, and then the following year, now we're going to do that with our secondary schools. So it's understanding that there's a big urgency, but trying to manage that with timing, and knowing that there are just this human capital element that you can't overlook. At the end of the day, you need to do this for students so that they can maximize. And it doesn't matter what side of town their school is in, they're going to have access to research-based curriculum by practitioners who have been supported in the training. So that was a big lesson for us.
I'll speak about Clark here in Las Vegas. I think our challenges are, and like my colleagues have mentioned, like Michelle Simmons said, we are also highly invested in many tier 1 programs. We're in our first year of social studies, ELA last year, science the year before that, and mathematics. So we have the 4 core subjects that are rolling out in a 4-year sequence. So it's been overwhelming for our teachers to do so. Luckily here in Nevada, we have a legislation called Read by Grade 3, and every elementary school is funded a literacy strategist. So that person supports the rollout of the science of reading and a lot of the ELA components of our tier 1 curriculums that we have. The challenge we have is, how do we then train secondary, middle school, and high school teachers? As Linmara said earlier, there are newcomers and SLIFE students that we have that come to our doors, and how do we then prepare them and teach them phonics as well, and just assume that they know, so they're going to catch on to that, right? And I think the other thing we need to also do is consider the different perspectives. A lot of the reading I've been doing and a lot of some of the webinars I've personally been attending is how the science of reading is really written through a monolingual lens and doesn't necessarily consider the needs of multilingual learners and students who speak a different language other than English. So how do we supplement and how do we unlearn, and then also just kind of understand and analyze the research and the products that we're putting in front of our teachers so that we are being ourselves efficacious in what we are presenting to our students.
Leila, I want to offer just one point, and language matters a lot. Our students, before they're anything else, they're gen ed students. And that has been the message for us. And we've also learned the power of communication and help people forecast some of the things that are happening and establishing a clear why. Yes, we have the Virginia Literacy Act, but we're not doing things because legislation is telling us to do them, but because we care enough about our students to do the right thing. So intentionality in the message, and every time we're in spaces, just continuing to remind people of the why, because in the midst of everything, there's a lot going on, and folks need to be reminded and hear it in writing, the training, so that you can have buying. I never want people to do something because the legislation says that, that's compliance, but how do you use the right thing to move people to embed this into their instruction? Because we know that what matters is when the teacher closes the door. And how do we create a clear why that compels them to adopt those practices on a daily basis so that kids win as a result?
I love that. And I think one thing that I want to elevate before we transition to the next question is how intentional we were about some of the language we've been using during this session, right? We're not solely just talking about science of reading. Science of reading is our example, right? But how do we as leaders take a mandate, take a shift, and really adopt change? And I love the reference to MTSS, right? I think when we can flip the script and think, what's the opportunity here? We've been struggling to feel good about MTSS in our systems for years now. And so is there an opportunity with science of reading? And Eric, your point about how do you take this and factor in the framework shortcoming? So science of reading isn't a perfect model, right? But how do we take this model and adapt it? And so I really appreciate how we're thinking and talking about agency and voice, how we're thinking about the vision. So this isn't an and a mandate, right? How do we articulate it to our staff and bring them along to change those hearts and minds? So I love the connections that I'm hearing to what effective change management looks like, but also how this just fits into an ecosystem of other initiatives and goals that you all have set forth for yourselves. So with that, we've talked about challenges. We've talked about what it means to you. Let's talk about the good stuff. So Eric and Lila, if you can kick us off, what are highlights or examples of good differentiation?
All right, I'll go ahead and start us off here. I'll give two examples. We here in Clark are in our third year of implementing our MTSS system. We have really good systems for tier 1, and it's not perfect, right? But when we administer assessments, fall, winter, spring, and the MAP assessment with NWEA, we track that data, we monitor our students, we create intervention plans. We have Core 95 as for those students who are below certain thresholds on that. And we are doing a great job of systemizing what intervention looks like and differentiation looks like for our students at the elementary level. Middle school and high school does present a challenge for us because those of us who are secondary educators, we know that schedules, master schedules, and time blocks and instructional blocks play a challenge because they are unique for every single school. So it's how do we differentiate that amongst our schools ourselves? That is our problem of practice currently, but in the elementary setting, it is going pretty well so far. And then I'll speak about the population that I represent here in Clark. It's our ELs, and I had mentioned this in the intro. Our multilingual learners, we have about 17,000 newcomers and about 18,000 long-term English learners. And what we've created are instructional courses that are designed to meet the needs of newcomers and to meet the needs of long-term English learners. So once they get to middle school, they have a course that they can take that is optional, not mandatory, because I was an educator in California for 20 years, and you get designated ELD and you have to have that English language development class, whether it takes up an elective or a class that is going to spark your interest. Here in Nevada, we have voice and choice, but if a student really needs those language supports, we encourage them to take that class, and we have that. So we partnered with WestEd to develop a curriculum called Focus Language Study. And for our long-term English learners, we have an academic content language expansion class, and we implement Dr. Kate Kinsella's English 3D program in doing so. And this is our first year of really implementing that system district-wide. And we're going to continue to implement those supports for our short-term English learners, and then provide those systems and supports for our elementary English learners, utilizing and centralizing our Title III funds. So it's been a good shift for us in how we systemize and support and differentiate. For our ELs, it's the first time we've done so in Clark, and it's been very exciting work, challenging work, but it's been a success for us in the fact that it's making sense. And as we provide professional learning, and we at all levels for administrators, central office, and teachers, we are providing that sense of clarity and coherency for our educators across the system, and they are understanding the why. And again, moving from compliance to really, this is why we're doing so, in order to develop student agency and to develop independent thinkers who are going to be successful.
Yeah. I love it. I will add that our process with MTSS has evolved over the past couple of years. One thing I'm really proud of that we're doing in our district is we actually have a PSST teams that we're establishing across all of our schools, and these are our problem solving support teams. And what this does is it merges the idea of both academic and behavior support in the MTSS spectrum, so that we're actually addressing the whole child. And we're really, really proud of that, because sometimes when a teacher might come in trying to refer a student through the process, whether it's for access to services in special education, we really look at how have we progress monitored and what have we done to intervene before we get to that point. And oftentimes when you really unlock that puzzle, you look at it and you say, okay, there are some challenges to the students, maybe their home life, maybe they have a need for some social emotional learning. And so taking those components and really looking at a support structure for them that encompasses both the academic and also the social emotional needs of students helps us address the whole child. And so that has been something that it isn't two separate meetings, come talk about the student through this lens or through this lens. It's about how do we address the whole needs of the child. And that's been a really successful process. I feel that our campuses feel now that we're being very streamlined and very intentional, and we're addressing sometimes just both issues that can present themselves, whether the student is bored because they're not getting the right differentiation support, or they have a sense that maybe they don't belong, right? And how do we reconnect and have give them just that space for belonging so that they get what they need. And you'll see how quickly those challenges become, now this is your best advocate in that class. And then the other thing that I will highlight as a district practice for differentiation is we've started a newcomer academy. We've always had one for our high school age students, but now our middle school students also have plays that, just like my colleague Eric mentioned, it's a choice, right? We don't impose upon families that this is where thou shalt go. But if they want a little bit more of that language support and that middle school experience, they can have that with teachers who are highly trained to differentiate with them. And our schools take really great care to create a very inviting culture to celebrate the diversity of our students. And so we're really proud of what we've been able to do with our newcomer program for our middle school students as well.
Michelle or Lynn Mara, anything you would add to that?
I don't necessarily have a differentiation success story, but I will share. I shared a few moments ago our journey with high quality instructional materials. We decided at that time, coupled with pursuing the science of reading, a year before the state of South Carolina made it a requirement for teachers to be trained in the science of reading. We took that mantle up about a year before the state did. And we ensured that all elementary grade teachers and interventionists had the benefit of letters training. That's language essentials for the teachers of reading and spelling, for teachers of reading and spelling. And so we offered a stipend for teachers to get trained. In the 2 years since we've rolled out that high quality instructional program, in tandem with our science of reading professional development, we've seen a 9.6 percentage point increase in our English language arts results from our state assessment. And so I want to just emphasize how valuable the science of reading coupled with high quality instructional materials have been for us as a system. We don't get those results overnight. It doesn't happen by chance. It happens with really intentional, deliberate planning and execution.
Lynn Mara, would you add anything? We also have some questions coming through in the chat that I'd like for us to get to.
Sure. For us, it has been the curriculum amplifications and really giving through the curriculum work that we've done, teachers a space where they can see how they can differentiate depending on the language level of each student. And that has been very, very helpful because they can see how both coexist and how you can provide access to perhaps a level 1, level 2 English learner and still, right, hold the rigor there. So it has been hard work, but beautiful work because going back to tier 1, right, we want to make sure that we guarantee access for all.
Thank you. So I'm going to try to bring some of the questions together. So thank you, audience, for engaging with us. These are such thoughtful questions. So I think what our audience is really eager to hear more about is many of you have talked about the diversity of your student population and the diversity of their background, right? Language, culture, being a newcomer at the secondary level. I'm a former high school history teacher. I dealt with this in the early aughts. It is so hard. How do I deliver content? How do I make sure that they're learning the language? How do I not make assumptions about their understanding of what school is? So power, authority, depending on where they come from, right? And so there's so many assumptions baked into what we do. I think our audience wants to hear from you all. How do you navigate that? What does it look like when you're trying to help them adjust to American schooling, teaching English, right? And then layer on, how do you choose the materials and resources to support your staff who need to support your students? So that's big, but I think that really brings together what the audience is eager to hear. Is somebody ready to jump on this very big question? All right, Lynn Mara, I love it. She's ready.
I am, because this is, I shared with you earlier, it presents a challenge sometimes, but it's something that we had to prioritize because we are, the 10th most diverse in the nation. And to me, especially for English learners, the message has been no matter your role, because people tend to go towards instruction. No matter your role, you're a leader of English learners. So that means facilities colleagues are leaders of English learners. Food and nutrition, they need to understand where our students are coming from so that they can create programs and systems that are inclusive for students. And for me, it has been a beautiful thing because it almost feels like I have a seat at every table representing our students. And it's one of the more exciting things about my role. And we have had to be very intentional about the collaboration outside of instruction, because everyone plays a role in this, from the Global Welcome Center. And I heard my colleague talk about the new Global Welcome Center. They welcome the students. What is the communication from that contact to the school? And how much do they know about the story so they can put systems in place and wrap around services for the students? The counseling department, right? Most of them don't have an instructional background, but they're making scheduling decisions that position our students to either have access to the right courses, or maybe they have questions around where they need to be. So it's a division focus. Budget. How are we prioritizing funds so that we have the supports that we need for them? I heard about the newcomer academy, and for us, right, we've had those conversations about we need more supports here because they require more. I will finish with this. I had the opportunity to be in front of our executive leadership last week on a series of professional learning, and these are cabinet members. They're learning about what the qualities and the attributes of a leader of else. We're out there. The work is not being done in an office. The work is being done in the field, and we are learning by shadowing the students what are their needs so that we can be intentional about the money and the time that we're spending as a division to support what is the second largest student group in our division. So I will say it's not something instructional. It'll take everyone to understand the role that they play and who are they, so we can move from opinion to facts, because that's the reality. There's a lot of opinions about who are the English learners and what their needs are based on assumptions, but we have the responsibility to bring the data and say these are their stories and these are their assets, and start with that so that they have a fair chance.
I can add on as well. We've done a similar um, we've taken on a similar stance in terms of supporting our multilingual population. We launched a brand new International Welcome Center in August as well. And it really is about wraparound care, providing a level of care for our scholars and their families. So we're going to take care of the basics for sure. We'll help with registration, transcripts, scheduling, and such. But we find the benefit, the humanity of it all really is about taking care of families and ensuring that they know where to get medical care, dental appointments, supplies, and such. And so that's one prong. We've also started a department that we call OTIS, the Office of Translation and Interpretation Services, to make sure that we're doing our due diligence to communicate at a high level, to communicate really well with our families. So that's the second prong. But finally, when we think about the whole child, their academics as well, shoring up the curriculum offerings, high quality instructional materials for all of our scholars. It's not that different from what we need to provide for our special education scholars, our struggling readers at large. They too need the benefit of high quality instructional materials that give them that fighting chance at competing with their like peers. And so that's the Charleston County perspective.
Yeah, I think I can just add very quickly a couple of thoughts on advocacy, right? You know, through having a seat at the table with our executive cabinet, it's inviting. I've invited our director of multilingual department to come and present, and I did it as now let's talk about how are we going to fund the sustainability of this International Welcome Center, because it is federally grant funded, and as we know, those dollars may or may not be readily available year to year. So when we think about how to support and how to help our students, I think it comes from a place of understanding that when we have a seat at the table, we want to be hyper responsible to all of our students, right? And helping all of our students be able to access those opportunities, and it begins with education. So that's very, very important to us that we are able to articulate not just the numbers, but the stories and the background and the need, so that then we can make really informed decisions of how we sustain the supports for our students and our families.
I'll echo the same thing. We have a family support center that has onboarding counselors and that help the schools and so forth, and medical services and food pantries, things like that. We also have a newcomer high school called Global Community High School, which is a school of choice for our students here in Clark. And again, just kind of, it's nice to hear that there are similar systems and structures happening. And Limara, I'd love to see the PL that you gave to your executive cabinet. I'm constantly having conversations as a person that sits at extended cabinet, constantly just wondering like, okay, what can I say? What can I do without always like, being very careful at the same time? We all know how that is. About the conversations that I need to have and saying the thing when it's appropriate so that we can move the work forward.
I'm hearing some wonderful themes, going on through this, and it's just been, my cup is full, my heart is full with all of this too. I'm hearing themes of no one size fits all, knowing your students, really getting out there. I've heard intentionality no less than 10 times today. So it's like really being intentional about whatever you're doing out there. I've also heard and put in the chat, think big, start small, and scale fast. And that's the way that we're going to go ahead and make things happen for our kids. But most importantly, I heard corazón, and that's heart. You have to have the heart to go ahead and work with all of our kids and make a difference for every single one of them. And that goes back to a theme that, that we have here at ALAS and that we actually do, and that I actually is my personal mantra, which is MIATA, M-I-A-T-A. And it's make it about them always. And when you make it about the kids always, everyone wins out there. And we just can't forget that we also have to make it about our teachers, because there's a common misconception. I think Eric might have mentioned it earlier, that we need to have systems of support, not only for our students, but for our teachers, because sometimes we take for granted, we think that we know where they're at, and we need to give them differentiated methods of instruction as well, because not all teachers learn the same, right? They're just they're adult children is really what they are and stuff, right? So we need to make sure that that differentiation continues, not only at the classroom level, but also in the building leader level as well. So just some really great lessons learned. This has been a great conversation so far. Again, like I said, my bucket is full, and I just want to thank you guys, from the bottom of my heart, for being here and for taking a part of it, and really taking up and giving up your time to be here today with all of us, and all of you that are actually listening in and tuned in right now. Thank you guys for joining us as well. Layla, I'll turn it back over to you, so you can go ahead and add some final comments there as well.
Thank you. I appreciate it. So I just want to kind of bring this all together and share, come back to the framework and what does it look like to try to map out your change. We talked a lot about intentionality. We talked a lot about having an implementation plan. And so what we've built here at Education Elements that will be circulating after this is some guidance on how you can think about your blueprint for change. So as you make it about them always, what you see here is a science of reading rollout framework. And, as I was reflecting on yet another change and thinking about, I think we all know this quote, change is constant, but our ability to change is what determines our success, right? And so how do we adapt our systems at large? How do we adapt as leaders, individuals, and create environments in which our students can adapt? I think this whole starting small and then scaling fast, one of the things that I often see folks maybe step over is really being clear with their constituents, your board, your community, your staff, short, mid, and long-term goals. Where I see us fall down so many times is everybody's looking for the long-term goal. And if the long-term goal isn't achieved in the short term, this is deemed a failure. And I would hate to see that happen with this, because I think there's an opportunity. I think that our panelists shared the complexity of the science of reading framework, the opportunity that it presents as we strive to effectively effectively implement MTSS, which we know is the right framework for supporting our students, this is a great opportunity for us. And so I would encourage you all, and in our work here at Education Elements, really over communicating and setting that expectation of short, mid, and long-term goals so that you give yourselves the runway, so that you identify those barriers early. So I loved Michelle's point about starting with the pilot, right? Sometimes we just want to jump and scale because we feel the urgency to supporting our students because our students are there and their needs are real. But when change is done thoughtfully, when you clearly communicate, when you do it with heart, when you consider the diversity of your community and you don't take it off the shelf, everybody talked about tailoring what they were doing. It can be effective, and we can support our students, and we will support our students, and we know more change is coming. But this session today, Yuli, I agree, my heart is full. I know that so much good work is being done out there, and I just want to thank our panelists, and I want to thank our audience for their commitment to our children, to our teachers. And I also will encourage you to make a friend here, because we as leaders, it's lonely at the top, right? And so making sure that you're leaning on your network and sharing resources and have your phone a friend. Yuli's my phone a friend when I'm pulling my hair out. And that is critical for us as leaders so that we can guide through change. So with that, I want to thank everyone. And I look forward to the next time that we're all together. Yuli, did you have something you wanted to say?
No, I was just going to tell everyone that, hey, listen, a phone a friend doesn't have to be like, again, we represent ALAS. And, it doesn't necessarily mean you have to be Latino to go ahead and be a part of the organization. We definitely need our allies out there. So it doesn't matter what your background is and everything. We definitely need you to help support the kids because, again, it's all about the corazón that our kids need for you. So for sure.
And so with that, thank you. I think we're going to provide you with the ability to download our change management framework that I've referenced a few times. And we hope that you follow the blogs that we're pushing out, the resources that we're pushing out. For those who are here live with us, we'll be sending out a recap in which we'll provide additional resources because we also, in addition to ALAS and so many of our other partners out there, are deeply committed to supporting the good work that you all are doing out in the field. Wishing everyone well.